your allegiance.
We gon' run this town.
All right, hello everybody. How's everybody doing tonight? This is going to be the first interview of many. I'd like to introduce you guys to Joe Torillo, a 9/11 survivor. He was a firefighter and he survived two collapses of the World Trade Center and lived to tell about it. So I brought him here for everybody to kind of hear his story. It's an amazing one. If you'd like, Joe, can you start us off by telling us where you're from, where you grew up, and a little bit about yourself?
Well, I was born in a rough, tough Italian neighborhood in Brooklyn, New York. I tell people I came from a spaghetto. Within a 7-block radius is where every big gangster was born and raised, every single one of them, including Al Capone. And that was the environment that I grew up in. And my father and one of my uncles was mobbed up with the Genovese crime family. And I was born into that environment. And I knew that that was not the life for me. My father didn't want me and my brothers getting involved in that kind of a life. My father never went to high school. He was a good man. My uncle was a good man. They were mobbed up, but they were very, very honorable people. You know, long before they had the lotto and stuff like that, they were running their own lotto in the neighborhood. They made a decent living out of it. It was illegal, but it was certainly not immoral. People played numbers with my father and my uncles, and they made a commission on the people that bet with them. And that's just what life was. So if you ever watch the movie Goodfellas, I could take the people from the neighborhood I grew up with and put them right on set and just roll the cameras. That's exactly who the people were when I grew up.
Wow.
It's a very, very different kind of a life than the people that I meet. Because, I travel all over the country. I've spoken in all 50 states multiple times, including Hawaii and Alaska. And I get to meet people from around the country that are so different from the people that I grew up with. And it was a big eye-opener for me because I was raised in a very, very proud Italian family. But the fact was that they were too proud when I look back because everything had to be Italian. If something was Italian, it was better. If you were Italian, you could be a friend. If you weren't, you probably would never be my good friend. If you were a doctor and you were Italian, you were a good doctor. If you were a lawyer, you were Italian, you were a good lawyer. If you were a priest and you were Italian, you were a good priest. They weren't teaching us that, but that's what I absorbed from them. And then over the years, I finally realized that, you know what, Italians, they are very proud people, but we don't own we don't own everything that was ever accomplished in this life. And I ended up making my best friends who were not Italian. It was a big eye-opener for me. So I do a whole presentation on something called prejudice, tolerance, stereotyping, and discrimination, opening up people's eyes to the life that I was born in and how I changed by looking out and embracing other people and their cultures, their race, and their religions.
Yeah, definitely. That's where I kind of grew up as well. Was if it was Italian, it was better. It didn't matter what it was. If you were Italian, you bought Italian products and you supported the community. So that's one thing good about growing up in that type of environment is the community that you grow up and grow around. So I definitely agree with you there. So what did you do for a living? What was your career?
Well, you know what? I did a lot of things. I went to an old boys Catholic high school in Brooklyn, New York. And while I was in high school, I was a junior. I lied about my age, and I got a job working for the New York City Parks Department nights. I was working nighttime after school, in my junior and senior year of high school and also through college. I was working for the New York City Parks Department. In the wintertime, I worked in the ice skating rink in Brooklyn. I was what they call the skate guard. I would skate around and control the crowd. I would use the machine called the Zamboni and scrape the ice and lay a new layer of ice. I did that every winter for 7 years. And in the summer, I would work in the swimming pools or beaches or one of the parks in New York City. And then after I did that, I was done with college, and I took a short stint as a New York State correction officer. I worked in maximum security jails for about a year, and I hated that job. And I only took that job as a stepping stone as I was waiting to be called for the New York City Fire Department. And then I got a call from the New York City Transit Authority, the subway system. They offered me a job, and I jumped on that immediately because I was tired of traveling upstate New York 6 days a week, 85 miles each way as a correction officer. And for about a year and a half, I was a mason and a bricklayer for the New York City Transit Authority. And then the fire department called me, and I decided to make a whole career with them. I was actually going into the New York City Police Department before the fire department. I wanted to be a cop more than I wanted to be a fireman because my uncle and his son were cops in New York City, and I wanted to be a cop. But when I found out that the fire department works 1 day every 3 days, I saw a chance of having a side hustle because I'm a carpenter by trade.
Okay.
And that's how
did you end up with the FDNY?
Well, what happened was I was going into the police academy, and then that day I got the letter from the fire department. I had to call up my investigator at the police department, the sergeant that got on the phone, and he says, don't tell me you can be late on your first day, kid. I said, hey, Sergeant, I just got a letter from the fire department. They asked me if I want to be sworn in. He said, you got to be kidding me, kid. You're my cleanest candidate. I cleared you in 4 days. He said, hey, kid, take the fire department to a better job. And he hung up the phone in my face. I said, okay, I guess I'm going on to the fire department. And that's what I did. And in hindsight, it was the best thing I ever did in my life.
Yeah. So what was some of like the calls and stuff like that you would go out on? Obviously fires, but what was your kind of day-to-day like before?
Well, what happened was this here, I didn't have any connections when I went into the fire department. I didn't have any uncles or cousins or neighbors that were firefighters. So when I graduated the fire academy, of all 357 firehouses in New York City that could arbitrarily place me to start my career, they placed me in a brand new firehouse across the street from the South Tower, Engine Company 10. And that's where I started my career. And I was there for 15 years. And over the course of 15 years, we responded to obviously thousands of alarms in the 7-building complex called the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers being 2 of those 7 buildings and the icons of the site. But we respond to every kind of emergency you could imagine. And most of the calls that we do respond to in the New York City Fire Department, believe it or not, has nothing to do with fires. We respond to a lot of car accidents and a ton of medical emergencies, and also like utility emergencies, gas leaks, electrical conditions, subway incidents in Manhattan. The smallest part of our job on the New York City Fire Department, but the most important, the most dangerous part is fighting a fire, but it's actually the smallest part of our day-to-day operation.
Yeah. Probably a lot of elevators getting stuck, stuff like that.
You ain't kidding. We do elevators all the time, manholes blowing up, when the salt from the snow melting streets corrode the electrical lines underground. They start blowing the manholes in springtime. Car accidents, elevator emergencies, subways, everything, you name it, we respond to everything. I've seen death in the most horrible ways you could ever imagine. Nobody has seen death the way I've seen death in my career, the most horrible. Any possible way you could witness a death, I've seen it all.
Yeah, because everything in New York is over the top. So I'd imagine like the homicides are over the top. The accidents are over the top. Everything's over the top because people are doing the craziest of things in Manhattan.
I've seen stabbings. I've seen shootings. I've seen the most horrific car accidents. I've seen people squashed in elevators. I've seen people on fire, suicides. And of course, the worst thing of all, on September 11th, I seen people, 200 to 300 people jumping out of the building and splattering all over the grounds and the roofs of the other buildings. Nobody's ever had to witness that in their life. Trust me when I tell you.
And see, and not to get graphic or anything like that, but I always kind of wondered that because I've heard people jumping out. So what was on the ground? Was it just like a red splatter, or did you actually see full people, or
Well,
was
what
it just
happened?
part?
Well, the first person that I saw jump, and I'm not saying that it was the first person. It's the first person that I saw. I thought a piece of the building had fallen off and was coming to the ground, and so I
Okay.
ran. I tried to duck. I tried to duck under a bridge, but I turned back, and then I wanted to take a look to see where that piece of metal was flying, and it turned out to not be a piece of metal. I saw arms and legs flailing, and then at that point, I'm saying to myself, "Wait a second, this is a person who just jumped." And
Yeah.
when they hit the street in front of the World Trade Center, all you heard was a big. It sounded like an explosion. All you heard was boof, boof. That's all you heard was like boof, and then all of a sudden you saw this red liquid just jump, just this red liquid splatter up in the air, and then there was nothing left. It was just a wet spot on the street. There was no part of a body. I don't know what happened. It just like
Wow.
the whole body just disappeared. It was just a big wet spot on the street with no body part and just red liquid, which is their blood flying up in the air. After a while, I just couldn't take it no more
Yeah.
because all during my career, I've seen death in every which way you can imagine. But the thing is that in all those other instances, when I arrived at the scene, the person was already dead. But on September 11th, I had to share in people's death. I'm looking at them from above. They're waving their arms at us as if they're saying, "Come up and get us. We can't take it no more." Then they decide to jump, and you're counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. They hit the ground or a roof of another building, and so I'm putting in a situation where I have to share in person's death. They're alive
Yeah.
for that 8 seconds. I don't want to witness their death anymore.
Yeah. There's a chat. It's kind of an interesting question. Did you see anyone get killed from a jumper? So somebody that was running to help somebody, and then a jumper killed him by jumping.
No, I didn't see it, but it did happen. A
Okay.
firefighter by the name of Danny Suhr, Suhr. He was actually on the fire department football team. Him and the members of his company, Ladder Company 108, had just arrived from Brooklyn, New York, and they were walking into the South Tower, and a woman jumped, and unknowns to them, they didn't know that the woman jumped. They was walking straight towards the South Tower, and the woman landed directly on top of Danny Suhr and killed him instantly. I mean,
Yeah.
the chances of that happening is so remote. It's like two people spitting a spitball in the dark in a classroom, and the spitballs hitting each other in the middle of the room.
Wow. So not to jump that far ahead, but it was a question. So can you take us back to, like, let's say like a year before 9/11, when you had a major contract going for a toy, and then you can kind of lead us into what had happened.
Well, that's part of my story, which happens to be a very interesting and ironic story, probably the most ironic story, and maybe the most interesting story anybody's ever heard, especially because it's around September 11th. So we're going to rewind the clock and go back in time. A couple of years before September 11th, I got hurt very seriously in a fire one night, and I was convalescing in headquarters. I was running their public education program. I was going out 7 days and 7 nights a week preaching the message of fire prevention and survival. And in January 2001, I was sitting in my office in headquarters 9 months before 9/11, and the phone rang. It was a company called Fisher Price Toys. I thought they had the wrong phone number. They said, "No, we don't have the wrong phone number. We want to speak to Lieutenant Turillo." I said, "Okay, that's me. How could I help you?" I thought maybe they opened up a new office in Manhattan. They wanted me to go there and host fire drills. They said, "No, it has nothing to do with that. We want to run something by you might be interested in." I said, "Okay, so so what is it?" They said, "Do you have some time to speak?" I looked at my watch. I said, "It's 9 o'clock and I work till 6 o'clock. Can you speak for 9 hours?" "Shoot, give it to me. What do you got? What do you want?" They said, "Are you familiar with the Fisher Price Corporation?" I said, "I think it's a household name in this country." They said, "Well, it is, but more specifically, do you know anything about our little action figures we call rescue heroes that kids love?" No, truthfully, I don't really know anything about it. Well, let us explain it to you. We have a whole line of action figures called rescue heroes that kids love. We have a little police officer called Jake Justice, his partner, a canine officer called Bill Barker. We have their boss, Sergeant Cyrene, his supervisor, Captain Cuffs. We have an ambulance attendant by name of Perry Medic, a lifeguard called Sandy Beach, a construction worker called Jack Hammer, an astronaut called Roger Houston, a scuba diver called Gil Gripper, a mountain rescue specialist by name of Rocky Canyon, and his partner Cliff Hanger. We have a medevac pilot by name Hallie Copter. We have a lumberjack called Ben Chopin. We have a ski patroller called Alpine. We have a female firefighter called Wendy Waters. We want our new rescue hero to be a New York City firefighter. We're going to call him Billy Blazers. If you help us design it, we'll give you $1 for everyone sold around the world.
$1.
$1. The dollar wasn't going to go in my pocket. It was going to support my public education program. And I'd use that kind of funding to buy smoke detectors and give them out free to people in New York City that didn't have them. And so it sounded like a great partnership, but I had to run it through Mayor Giuliani's team of lawyers called the Corporation Council to make sure there wasn't a conflict of interest, because as a city agency, you can't casually take money from a public entity. And so obviously Mayor Giuliani's lawyers figured out how we can go into this partnership without getting in trouble. That's just what lawyers do, taking money from the left pocket and putting it into the right pocket and not going to jail. That's just the way it goes. That's just what lawyers do. I understand that. But anyway, so I set up a meeting in the end of January 2001 with the Fisher-Price executives, the artists, illustrators, and toy designers. And for a whole day in my office and headquarters, as I'm speaking about what a firefighter looks like with his firefighting clothing called bunker gear, his air mask, his air tank, his tools and equipment. The artists and illustrators had art pads on easels with crayons and markers, and they're drawing as I'm speaking. And at the end of the day, it's fully sketched out. They had this new rescue hero, a New York City firefighter called Billy Blazers. They took the artwork and went to the factory. And 6 months later, in July of 2001, they had the mold and the prototype. They called us up and they wanted to look it over before he went to mass production. So in the first week of July of 2001, I set up a meeting. We looked over the prototype and the mold. And there were certain things that we thought they should kind of change and tweak a little bit. And one of the executives, a woman by the name of Laura Yorovec, I had developed a nice relationship with over the 6-month period of this project we were working on with Billy Blazers. She took out a big Sharpie. She took out a black Sharpie. She drew a big mustache on Billy Blazers. And she said they need to look more like me. And with that and all the other changes, they remolded Billy Blazers. That was about 3 weeks process. And now it's the end of July of 2001. They called us up. They says, hey, we got the mold redone. We wanted to look it over again before it goes to mass production. So in the end of July of 2001, I set up another meeting. We looked over the new Billy Blazers that was remolded with the big mustache to look like me. And we agreed on going to mass production. And Fisher-Price was really excited, and they wanted to have a big press conference in New York City. They said, when can we have a press conference? Well, this meeting was the end of July of 2001. I said, let's do it in October. And they said, why October? I said, well, we need some time to get the press conference together. And I said, October's Fire Prevention Month. It's the longest running health initiative in the world. It actually goes back to 1871 after the Great Chicago Fire. Every October since, we captured that month to create an awareness of preventing fires. And they said, well, that's very apropos. It's a nice connection to this project we're on, but October's too close to Christmas and the holiday season. We want to get Billy Blaze on the market a little bit sooner. Well, October was too distant. This meeting was the end of July 2001. I couldn't think of another date in between that would be appropriate. And I was kind of brainstorming, and I said, 911 is the emergency phone number in New York City when you need help from the fire department, the police department, or an ambulance. Why don't we, for the first time, have a 911 themed safety day? We could talk about preventing fires, surviving fires, and introduce the new rescue hero, New York City firefighter called Billy Blazers. And the Fisher-Price executive says, oh my God, that's such a great novel idea. So on 911, September 11, 2001, at 9 o'clock in the morning, every TV station, every newspaper reporter, all the city politicians, the Fisher-Price executives were all waiting for me in Rockefeller Center next to Radio City Music Hall for the press conference to introduce a new rescue hero called Billy Blazers, a New York City firefighter.
Wow. So it was supposed to be on 9/11. You were supposed to have a meeting with Fisher-Price.
At 9 o'clock a.m., that's correct.
on this fire, man. And I have that up on the screen so the viewers can see Billy Blaze as well. I don't know if you can on how you have your phone set up, but just so the viewers can see, this is the doll or the action figure that he was making, and he had a meeting on 9/11, which was the day you were going to do it, the emergency call 911. Okay, so can you take us to the morning of 9/11 and kind of, how you started your day, what you were doing, and what your plans were for the day?
Well, on September 11, 2001 at 9 o'clock, this was going to be a really big day in New York City. This was the culmination of this project of creating a new rescue hero that was made to look like me. And ironically, how I chose that date on a premonition, I don't really know. But I got to my office in headquarters about 6 o'clock that morning in Brooklyn, and I wanted to catch up on, typical office work like emails and voicemails and payroll and scheduling. And it was about maybe 20 minutes to 9. I says, oh my God, I should have been in Rockefeller Center. I didn't realize that the morning slipped by me so quickly. And I was getting ready to leave my office with my dress uniform. And somebody said in headquarters, a plane just hit the World Trade Center. So I went next to my office, and my boss had the TV on, and I saw smoke coming out of the North Tower. And I asked my boss, wait a second, is this a hoax? Is this a movie? Is this a simulation? He says, no, they just interrupted the morning show. This really happened. So at that point, I ran to the elevator and I went to the underground garage in headquarters in Brooklyn. And I zoomed out of the fire department headquarters with my vehicle. And I headed towards the Brooklyn Bridge. I wanted to beat the rest of the traffic and emergency vehicles because I was afraid I might not get to the press conference in time. I only had 20 minutes to make the press conference at 9 o'clock. It was now. So
you had to make a decision to either go and help the people at the World Trade Center or go to this business meeting.
Well, exactly. And when I zoomed out of fire department headquarters in downtown Brooklyn, 2 blocks away, I was already on the Brooklyn Bridge. And I'm zooming over the Brooklyn Bridge. I'm just hectic and frantic. I want to make this press conference. And about 20 seconds later, I'm on the Manhattan side of the bridge, right by City Hall. And I look to the left, and about 5 blocks away is the World Trade Center. I could see about 10 floors of fire around the top of the North Tower. And I realize now this was no little plane. It had to be a jet. But it doesn't make sense because jets don't fly in that direction. They fly in the opposite direction on the approach to LaGuardia Airport. And I'm thinking, what do I do? My original firehouse where I started my career was right across the street. I left there in 1996, 5 years before when I got promoted to lieutenant. And I was thinking about all those firefighters. They would be the first ones in the building. And I had so much experience of being in that firehouse for 15 years. And I had to make a decision. Do I make a right and head up to Rockefeller Center for the press conference with Billy Blaze, or do I make a left and drive to my original firehouse, which is what I did. I was at my original firehouse at about 9 o'clock in the morning. I parked my car on the sidewalk in the back of the firehouse because I remember from the bombing in 93, we were the first ones in the building. They said, don't block the streets with emergency vehicles so we get ambulances to and from hospitals. So I parked my car on the sidewalk. I ran around the corner to the front of the firehouse. And both of the fire engines had already responded to the North Tower before I arrived. And although the doors of the firehouse were wide open, I really couldn't get in there because people from the neighborhood were laying all over the floor like pickup sticks. Civilians that were around the World Trade Center got hit with pieces of the building and jet fuel. They saw a firehouse with the doors open. They ran inside, and they kind of just toppled on top of each other like pickup sticks. And some were crying, some were screaming, some were in shock, some had burns, but nobody was in critical condition. And I kind of hopscotched over them. I took off my dress uniform and I borrowed a set of firefighting clothing from Lieutenant Tommy McNamara that was off duty. He was home that day. We all leave our equipment in the firehouse. So I grabbed Tommy McNamara's his helmet, his boots, his gloves, his jacket, his pants. And I ran out of the firehouse. I ran down the block to go into the North Tower, but I had to pass the South Tower to get to the North Tower. And as I'm running past the South Tower, I heard a roar. The second jet came right over my head. I was right underneath United Airlines Flight 175, the only one underneath it. And I watched it hit the building and disappear like a magic act. And this huge fireball came down right at me. I turned around, I ran 50 feet back into the firehouse, and that fireball exploded right in the middle of Liberty Street outside the firehouse.
When that happened, did you see like plane parts? Did you just think it was an explosion, or did you say you actually seen and heard the plane?
I saw the jet. I saw it for a split second, then the jet hits the building. It pierces the building, then there's nothing but a big hole, and a huge fireball comes right out of the building, right down
And
to the
that
street.
black
Right.
plume of smoke that would come out.
Absolutely. Yep. No pieces of the plane came flying back towards me, although they did find pieces of the plane on the other side of the building a couple of blocks away, like landing gear and stuff like that. I never
Okay.
saw that, though.
So you never saw nothing. So can you kind of describe, okay, so the plane hits the building, you're on the ground level down below on the street level, right directly in front of the World Trade Center.
Exactly. That's exactly where I'm
And
at.
can you kind of describe what was going on? Because there's always bystanders. I mean, what did people do? Just everybody just kind of scattered in different directions, or?
Oh, people, everybody that you saw, if you look at any pictures and photographs, and there's hundreds of them on the internet, you'll see people that were at the site. Everybody does the same thing. They either grab their head with both their hands or they put their hand over their mouth. That's what people do in shock. That's what people naturally do. Just look at anybody that has been witnessing a horrific scene. They'll put their hand over their mouth or they'll grab their head with both hands. And that's what everybody was doing. Some people were just like, eyes wide open. Some people couldn't look. Some people were crying. Some people were screaming. And I'm in the middle of it. And the first thing I said to everybody, I said, we're under a terrorist attack, because I knew that 2 buildings struck by 2 jets was no coincidence. And I was there for the bombing in 1993. And we were told back then that they might come back again and do this again one day. And obviously I knew that it was a terrorist attack. The second thing I told everybody that I encountered, I said, everybody on the top of the buildings are going to die. We're not going to get to them, and they're not going to get down. There's no way. There's no way we're getting to those people, and they're doomed. And they started jumping out anyway. And the third thing that I said, these towers are going to collapse today. And people said, "What?" I said, these towers are going to collapse. People looked at me and thought I was crazy. They couldn't understand why I was saying that. But I knew they were going to collapse because I studied them when I was in engineering school.
Yep. And they were built interesting too. So the elevator shafts and the stairs were in the center of the building.
That's
so when
correct.
you throw a plane into that, everything above that is trapped off from going through the damaged floors where the plane hit.
Well, you know what everybody forgets? You have all these people with these crazy theories, trying to prove that it was it was an organized collapse, that there were bombs set in the building. No, none of that's true. Trust me when I tell you. Listen, if anybody has an incentive to hold our government responsible for this, it's people like me who suffered and paid the price, all right? So there's no way in the world I would let the government off the hook if I thought for 2 seconds that our government was involved in this. And this was not an organized collapse, I do a whole presentation on this all around the world. And I'm currently representing the United States at the trial in Guantanamo, Cuba. I don't know if you know that or not, but I'm in the middle of the trial in Guantanamo, Cuba right now. I'm giving testimony at the trial to get a conviction against the 5 cohorts that orchestrated the attack on us.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. I mean, if I've looked into those videos before, and a lot of it seems halfway reasonable. A lot of it seems like, imagination gone too far. But one thing I will say is if this was planned by the government, it would be, the most, the biggest mass sacrifice ever. You know what I mean?
Do you know how to keep a secret between 100 people?
Yeah.
When 99 of them die.
Yeah.
So there's no way in the world, if this was a planned attack, you'd have to have so many people involved, and there's no way so many people would keep quiet over all these years and not tell the truth.
It takes thousands.
Of course, it's ridiculous, to think that this was a controlled demolition. I interviewed a company down in Washington, D.C., who goes around the world performing controlled demolitions on buildings and structures. Like if they want to take a hotel down in Las Vegas, this company in Washington, D.C. goes there, and instead of dismantling the building with cranes and derricks, they blow the building up. And people don't have to believe me. Just go on YouTube and Google controlled demolitions, and you will see how a controlled demolition is done. They set bombs off in the ground floor column and they start blowing the building up, and in all those videos you'll see those bombs exploding before the building starts to fall. The Twin Towers did not fall from the bottom like a controlled demolition. The buildings fell from the top, and people forget. They talk about, well, there was never a steel frame building on fire that ever collapsed. I says, well, you want to know what? There was never a steel frame building that suffered the amount of structural damage like the Twin Towers, and had two 767 jets sitting on floors that were only designed to hold 80 pounds per square foot. I went to engineering school. I studied those buildings in engineering school.
I think
if anybody wants to challenge me, get the cameras rolling. I'll do this totally unprepared.
Yeah. Oh no, you're definitely the one that, I think you should. I mean, it's hard to find somebody who was there. Trust me, I've been looking. But another thing is I think where a lot of the conspiracy comes from is from the building 7 that fell like 6 or 7 hours later, 5 hours later, something like that.
At 5:20 in the evening, that's correct.
Yeah, and it just kind of felt. Now that one to me looked like a controlled demolition, but I don't think the other ones did.
Well, number 7, you have to understand something. Before number 7 was built in 1984, okay, on that site, on that footprint of that building, was the electrical substation for all Lower Manhattan. They chose that footprint, and they had to build a building over the electrical substation. They couldn't eliminate the electrical substation, but they built the building on that site. And they had to build a building on top of the electrical substation, which meant that they weren't able to put support columns in certain areas. So they had to incorporate what's called transfer trusses, almost like an internal bridge inside the new building. And then the columns would sit on the internal bridge that spanned the electrical substation. And we theorized that internal bridge gave way, and then it brought down the building. And if there was a controlled demolition, not only would you see, but you hear the bombs going off. In every controlled demolition, you don't have to believe me, just Google it, all over YouTube. When you blow up a building with a controlled demolition, you'll hear boom, 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 boom. You'll see flashes and flashes coming out. You don't see any of that in number 7 or the Twin Towers.
Yeah. And usually with controlled demolition, it starts at the bottom, and then you see floors blowing as they go upwards, and then the building eventually falls.
Do you know how long it takes to set up a controlled demolition? It takes weeks and months maybe to do it. So how could they have done this without anybody noticing what they were doing? Think about it. It's absurd. And trust me, I have incentive to hold if anybody has an incentive to hold the government responsible for this, it's people like me. Trust me, I lost so much. My health is no good. I'm suffering advanced Parkinson's now because of the head injury. I lost a lot of my lungs. I got all kinds of medical issues. I lost my career. I lost my happiness. I lost everything that I valued in my life. And trust me when I tell you, I'm not a happy person. So if I thought the government had any complicity into this, I'd be the first one to be marching around trying to get them convicted.
Yep, I agree. So before we drifted off, we were standing in front of the South Tower, and the South Tower just got hit. So
at 9:03.
What is that?
At 9:03 a.m., which happens to be my lucky number.
9:03 a.m. 9:03 is his lucky number. So can you take us? What do you do next? What's your first thought? You've just seen a plane come into the next tower. So everybody thought that, when the first tower got hit, that it was an accident, a major accident. When the second tower got hit, everybody knew that it was an attack because the odds are just not there.
Yeah, I mean, two jets striking both Twin Towers within 17 minutes of each other. That's no coincidence. Yep. That's a terrorist attack.
Yep. So after the North Tower is hit, the second one, it's a terrorist attack. Take us to the hour, I think 55 minutes before the South Tower collapses.
That's correct.
So what do you do in that time frame? What are you doing, and what did you do?
Okay, so after the second jet struck the South Tower and the huge fireball came down, I ran and made it back into the firehouse 50 feet away, and that huge fireball smashed in front of the firehouse, exploded on the street. And I ran back out of the firehouse around the fireball, and I continued back to the North Tower, which is where I was going initially before the second jet came over my head. I got in front of the North Tower, and I ran to two friends I was firefighters with many years before. They were supplying water to the fire protection system, kind of like it's called the standpipe system. There's a red metal pipe in big buildings that runs up through the staircase. It's kind of like a fire hydrant inside of the building, and there's an outlet on every floor inside the staircase is where firefighters get their water supply for their hoses when there's a fire on any particular floor. And so they were supplying the water to the standpipe system. I had everything I needed to fight a fire except one thing. I needed an air tank, and every fire engine carries an extra air tank. And I went to every single fire engine that was at the scene. Every extra air tank had already been taken by another fireman. So I kind of got delayed. Had I gotten an air tank, I wouldn't be here today. Just for the grace of God, whoever had took those other air tanks probably didn't make it. But once I got that air tank, I was determined to go up as far as I could in the North Tower to meet the guys in my firehouse that I used to work with that were from that firehouse across the street, Engine Company 10. So I kind of got delayed. Then at that point, fire engines were coming to the scene and stopping in front of the North Tower. There was nobody outside the building directing them, so that they saw me. And two of those fire engines, I was personal friends with those guys just by coincidence. And I told the first fire engine, Engine Company 239 from Brooklyn, they pulled up and I heard somebody calling my name, Joe, Joe. And I looked inside the fire engine. There was a lieutenant by the name of Tony Mancuso. Him and I got promoted lieutenant together 5 years before. And he said, Joe, what's going on? What's going on? Somebody said a plane at the World Trade Center. I says, no, Tony, 2 planes hit both towers. He says, what are we doing? I said, what are we doing? I said, Tony, these buildings are going to collapse. And he looked at me, thought I was crazy. And he says, what are we doing? I said, Tony, the buildings are going to collapse. We're going to lose our water supply. We're going to lose our hydrants. Keep going about 9 blocks north from here and hook up to a fire hydrant, bring hoses down. And he kind of just took off. And then at that point, I realized that because I had so much experience responding to the World Trade Center as a firefighter for 15 years before 9/11, I knew where all the water supplies were. And I said, well, before I continue up into the North Tower, let me take one of the other fire engines that are at the scene, and let me start hooking up those fire engines to the other water outlets around the perimeter of the building. And that's what I did. I jumped in another fire engine. I don't know where their firefighters were up inside the building. And I was already a qualified driver for fire engines. And I took Engine Company 39. I jumped in and I rode down West Street. I made a U-turn and I parked right in front of the hotel, which was number 3 World Trade Center. The hotel was in between the 2 towers. And I got out and I was starting to supply water into the hotel. And then another fire truck pulled up from Brooklyn, Ladder Company 113. I hear somebody calling my name again. Joe. I looked up and it's the lieutenant by the name of Ray Brown. I worked with him in Brooklyn a couple of years before. He said, Joe, what's going on? I said, Ray, the building was struck by 2 jets. He said, what are we doing? I said, Ray, just make the U-turn and get out of here. These buildings are going to collapse. He said, what? I said, Ray, the buildings are going to collapse. Get the fire engine out of here now. And then at that point, cops and firemen were responding from Brooklyn through the tunnel that connects Brooklyn to Manhattan. The police were coming up, one after another, like in a caravan. They were stopped at Liberty Street, right by the South Bridge, where I was standing with Ladder Company 113. And the cops pulled up and said, hey, what's going on? What's going on? Somebody said a plane hit the World Trade Center. I said, no, 2 planes hit both Twin Towers. I said, what are we doing? I said, guys, make a U-turn and go back to the Brooklyn Battery Tunnel. Get your cars out of here. Why? What's the matter? I said, these towers are going to collapse. He said, what? I said, these towers are going to collapse. And he looked at me, thought I was crazy. I said, no, you got to make a U-turn. Get out of here now. He made a U-turn and he stopped at the police car behind them. He was talking to them, pointing at me, saying, I guess obviously he was telling those police officers what I just told them. They all started making U-turns and going back. And then the ambulance were rushing to the scene. And I told them the same thing. Park the ambulances on the other side of the street, 6 blocks away, on the other side of the police cars. Then one of the ambulances was going up to the South Tower. And I went up there and I told them, get out of here, because they wanted to set up a treatment area in the lobby. I said, you can't. They said, why? I said, the towers are going to collapse. They said, "Who the hell are you? We don't work for you. Got no authority." I didn't have any authority, but I gave myself the authority. He says, "No, you don't understand. You got to get out of here now. Get out of here. These towers are going to collapse." And he said, "Who the hell are you? Go screw off," whatever they were saying. It got a little vulgar, to be honest with you. I'm not going to use that language I was using. But I got them to turn around, and at that point, I'm standing outside the South Tower. I'm hot, I'm sweaty, I'm aggravated. I don't want to fight with people. And all of a sudden, I hear a loud rumble in the room, and I look up, and here comes the tower. It starts falling. I said to myself, "You idiot. You're the one who knew this tower was going to collapse, and you put yourself right underneath it." I said, "Okay, you got about 10 seconds left to live." And I started running down Liberty Street towards West Street, the main thoroughfare. And I tried to make it underneath the South Bridge. I went into the Battery Park City. I thought if I made it under the bridge, they'd find a piece of my body. And as I'm running, the air pressure of the building coming down took my helmet off of my head. The building was coming down what we call a pancake type of collapse, one floor hitting the floor below. Now, as each floor is hitting the floor below, it's puffing air out like a fireplace bellows. And I could feel the air pressure on my neck, but I'm not looking back. The building's coming down. Boom, 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 boom. And the air pressure takes my helmet off my head. My helmet flies off my head and it's flying right through the air, flying up in the air like in a wind current. Then the air pressure got so strong, lifting me off my feet. They said the air pressure was like 200 miles an hour, like a tornado. I was flying through the air. Then the South Tower fell on top of the hotel, split the hotel in half, and the hotel fell on top of me. A piece of steel split the back of my head wide open. Huge slabs of concrete just hitting my body. With every slab of concrete, more and more bones are breaking. Now the back of my head split open. I got a fractured skull. My ribs are broken. My left arm is snapped in half. My neck and spine is crushed. I'm bleeding internally. I'm pinned on the steel and concrete. And I'm in tremendous amount of pain. And I'm suffocating. There's no more air, no more light. Darker than midnight. And I'm buried with all these people. And they're all screaming at the top of their lungs, but we can't see each other. And after a while, the scream turns into cries into whimpers, whimpers into silence. One by one, I guess they all died. And then I was in the middle of all these fires, and I did something I hadn't done in a long time. Even though I went to 12 years of Catholic schooling, I kind of got away from religion. I didn't really like going to church, and I got away from it kind of, and I said a prayer, something I hadn't done in a long time. And I thank God for my career, and I didn't want to die angry. I accepted what was happening to me. I just prayed that I would suffocate before I burned to death. And then I had a vision of my 4 kids. The night before, September 11th, which was September 10th, I got home late that night, about 9 o'clock. I was out doing a fire presentation in a high-rise building in Manhattan. I got home about 9 o'clock, and my kids were waiting up for me. They should have been in bed, but they told my wife they had to talk to me. And I got home, and they said, Daddy, you said when you come home tonight, you're going to make plans to take us to Disney World. You've been telling us for 2 years. You've been telling us for 2 years we're going to go to Disney World, and you never take us. I said, kids, tomorrow I got a big day. I got a big press conference. After the press conference, I'm going to come home, and we're going to make plans to go to Disney World. And all I kept on saying to myself, that's all these kids ever asked for me. They never asked me for anything but to go to Disney World. And now I'll never get that chance. There'll be a new man to come to my wife's life, and they'll have a new daddy. They'll take him to Disney World. And I put my head down into the dirt. And then they came. They found a void. They found 4 of us, and they dug us out. They found me. They put me on a stretcher, and they put me on the deck of a boat on the Hudson River. They're holding my head closed, and I heard them saying I was going to die if I couldn't get to a hospital. Then somebody on the boat started screaming, "Oh my God, here comes the other building." Now the North Tower started collapsing, and huge pieces flew across the street to the Hudson River and falling on the deck of the boat. Everybody jumped overboard and left me behind, and I broke free from the stretcher. I jumped into the doorway. I ended up diving 10 feet headfirst into the engine room of the boat. Now the North Tower fell on top of the boat, and I'm buried a second time and suffocating all over again in the engine room of the boat.
Wow. And so I got a question here. I'm going to ask you this because you were a lieutenant in the fire department. One of our people here says, I lost 2 friends that day, Michael Roberts and Michael Ragusa, both firefighters. Did any of those names sound familiar to you?
Yeah, Michael Roberts. Michael Roberts is actually a nephew of a very good friend of mine, Chief Joe Fox from the New York City Police Department.
Okay.
Mike Ragusa, I know his mother and father. They used to volunteer at Ground Zero with me as a tour guide.
Okay. Wow. So
I didn't know him though. I know his parents.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. Okay. There you go, Stroop it. So he knows your people. So the building comes down, and how I'm imagining it is you're in between the Marriott and that walkway that goes over, what is it, the highway?
Well, yeah, that's West Street. It used to be called the West Side Highway, but the West Side Highway was dismantled back in 1983, the overhead structure. Now it's just West Street that goes all the way
Okay.
up onto the George Washington Bridge. But there's a bridge on Liberty Street that goes over West Street, so you don't have to walk through that heavy traffic, making your way into the World Financial Center of Battery Park City.
Yep. Okay. And so they find you, and they scoop you up, and you're on your way to the Hudson River to go, and because they were evacuating the entire city of Manhattan on that day.
That's correct.
So,
If you were on the east side, you ran over bridges into Brooklyn. On the west side, boats came from New Jersey and other parts of Staten Island, Brooklyn, and people were jumping on boats. And there's a whole documentary called Boat Lift. If you ever want to
yeah.
watch a documentary called Boat Lift on how many people that evacuated by boat on the west side. On the east side, you ran over the bridge.
Yep. Okay. So that's where you're at when they find you, and they put you on a stretcher or something like that. And
Yeah, long spine board.
Okay. And so they're carrying you over to a boat, which they would put you on. And then what happens when you get onto the boat?
Well, then when I'm on the deck of the boat, they're holding my head closed, and I heard them saying that I was going to die if I couldn't get to a hospital because I was losing a lot of blood. The back of my head was split wide open. I was screaming in pain. All my ribs are broke. My left arm is snapped in half. My neck and spine is crushed. I'm bleeding heavily. And then all of a sudden, somebody on the boat started screaming, "Oh my God, here comes the other tower." Now the North Tower collapsed a half hour later, and huge pieces of the North Tower flew across the street and were raining down on the deck of the boat like millions of shards of glass, almost like hail. And everybody jumped overboard, and I was left all by myself strapped to the spine board, and we're lucky swiping my right index finger. I hit the release belt that had my arms pinned to my chest. My left arm was snapped in half, and I rolled off the spine board, it stuck out my hand, and I felt the doorway. I jumped into the doorway not knowing it was the entrance to the engine room. I ended up diving 10 feet head first into the engine room, and now the North Tower buried the boat on the river, and I'm suffocating all over again.
Wow. So even while you're basically on a boat to get away from all this, then the North Tower comes down on you and buries you again.
Exactly.
Wow. Yeah, that's completely crazy. Something definitely had your back that day. You know, to be able to survive all that carnage and see everything, and then you're trying to help, and there's stuff that's not available for you that keeps you out of going up into the buildings and keeps you on a street level. And then the spot that you were in was like the perfect spot. I'm sure the Marriott saved your life.
Well, you know what? There's probably like a 20-foot radius, a 20-foot circle of radius where they found 4 of us in that little spot where there were 4 survivors. And anything outside that little circle of radius, nobody else survived it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's nuts. So you're on this boat, you're rescued, you just survived 2 of the tallest buildings in Manhattan collapsing on top of you in a terrorist attack that was random, and you're found. You're obviously still alive, and you're wearing another firefighter's outfit.
Yeah, that's correct. I was wearing Tommy McNamara's coat. So about an hour later, as I was suffocating all over again, people came back to the boat, and I heard voices. I could hear voices in the deck above, and I heard people jumping on the deck, and somebody came into the engine room to start the motor and found me. He screamed to the deck of boat, to the captain. He said, "There's a firefighter down here. He's not going to make it." The captain came down, took one look, and said, "Get the boat out of here now. We got to get him out of here." The boat skipped across the river to the shoreline of New Jersey, and ambulances and paramedics were waiting on the Jersey shore. And paramedics jumped onto the boat. They came into the engine room with another spine board, and they got me out of the engine room. And next thing I know, I'm in an ambulance, and they shut the doors of the ambulance, and I black out. And then I wake up, I'm in an operating room, but I don't know where I am.
Okay.
I'm in Jersey City Trauma Center, and I'm in the operating room. They had about 15 doctors and nurses all around me with scissors, cutting all my clothes off me, stark naked, and sticking needles and tubes in every part of your body. A needle and tube will go into. Excuse me. And on the inside of our firefighting code, we write our name. It said Tommy McNamara. So that's what I was admitted as.
Okay. So
And for 3 days, nobody knew where I was. I was declared dead for 3 days.
okay. So you're declared dead for 3 days, and they think you're this other guy. So
Exactly.
did you know the other guy whose
Yeah,
outfit you had on?
Yeah, Tommy McNamara. I worked with him in Engine Company 10, Ladder Company 10. But I left there in 1996 when I got promoted to lieutenant. So I knew Tommy McNamara. He was off duty that day. He was home with his wife.
Okay.
But I had his firefighting clothing on.
Wow. Okay. So he wasn't even in New York at the time.
No, he was upstate New York with his wife. He was off duty that day.
Wow. And you got this guy's thing on, and they think you're dead, and because they identified you through your firefighter outfit, I assume.
Exactly. They found my car all smashed up behind the firehouse. They said they found my car at midnight. I didn't appear. They said I was at the South Tower. They called my house that night to say I didn't make it.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. So your wife thinks you're dead. Your kids think you're dead, right?
Well, I don't know if my kids, I don't think they were young at the time. I don't know if my wife wanted to verbalize that to them. I don't know if they would have understood that. They were very young at the time. My oldest was only 11 years old. The youngest was 3.
Okay. So your wife definitely thinks you're gone. When's the next time that you have contact with your family after, waking up and all that?
Well, what happened was this here. That morning before I left headquarters, I got a call in my office from a good friend, my friend Richie. He asked me what I was doing that morning. I said, I have a press conference. He says, where? I said, in Manhattan. He says, wow. He says, what time are you going to be done with the press conference? I said, I really don't know. He said, I'm coming into Manhattan because he was a salesman for a fire sprinkler company. And he had some meetings in Manhattan. He says, how about we have lunch today? I said, yeah, that's great. I said, but I don't know what time I can meet you. I don't know what time I'm getting done with the press conference. He said, well, when you're done with the press conference, I'll be somewhere in Manhattan. Give me a call. We'll hook up for lunch. I said, okay, fine. So obviously, I hung up the phone. I get ready to go to headquarters. I get ready to leave headquarters when the plane is the World Trade Center. I head into Manhattan to the Twin Towers. He was already making his way into Manhattan for his meetings. And he was about 2 miles away when the first plane struck the tower. He pulled over, he got out, went into his trunk and took out a camera, was taking pictures. And at that point, some man came running, and maybe about 20 minutes later, as he was taking pictures, some man was at the towers, and he said, can you please do me a favor, take me home? My friend Richie says, where do you live? He says, I live in Patterson, New York. My friend Richie says, I live in Patterson, New York. Get in the car, I'll take you home. So my friend Richie took this random office guy who was in shock and took him back up to Patterson, New York, upstate. And he dropped him off at his house, and Richie went back to his own house in Patterson and stood there watching the television and watching and waiting and hearing to see if my name came up. And at midnight, he called the firehouse and they said I didn't make it. And then the next day, he heard that there were people in hospitals in other states in New Jersey, and he went out into all the states in New Jersey searching hospitals, and he found me. But the fire department did not know that I was alive for 3 days. My wife found out early the next day.
Yeah.
But the fire department did not know it. But the fire department didn't know it for 3 days. I was the last one taken off the list. I was the last one that the fire department found alive.
Okay. And so you just survived this. You just witnessed so much death, and your life really hanging on a string. So where are you at mentally after all of this? How does this affect you mentally?
That's a good question. I suffered very, very deeply. I don't know if I'm ever going to get over this. I mean, this is a terrible thing. I don't know where to begin, but life has got to go on. People ask me if I had survivor's guilt, and I said, no, not at all. I actually had survivor's anger, and I know that's kind of weird. Nobody wants to. I had survivor's anger. I was actually angry I had survived. I know that's weird, and I'm being very honest. I didn't want to talk about this ever. I don't want to say it in front of my family. I don't want people to start thinking differently about me, but I had wanted to die that day. I didn't understand how God took 343 firefighters and let them all march up to heaven together. And I wasn't allowed to be in that group to be known as a hero. And I just figured one day in the future I'll pass away and nobody will know who I was or what I did. But those 343 firefighters will forever be immortalized. And why wasn't I allowed to be in that group of heroes? I know it's weird, but over the years, as I travel all around the country doing a lot of public speaking, every single where I go, people tell me all the time, Joe, God saved your life for a reason. And in the last couple of years, I'm starting to realize that it's probably true. And it took this huge burden off of my shoulders and my chest. And it gave me a reason to want to live again and to just live life with real purpose, as I always did, but more now than ever, to really embrace people and to help people through all their challenges. Especially people that are going through depression. I try to talk them through it. Life isn't always what we want it to be. Life isn't always what we thought it would be. Life wasn't always what we hoped it would be for none of us. Life is full of challenges, but you know what? You'll never know your true strength until your weakest moment. And whatever you go through in life, just remember that the windshield in your car is much bigger than the rearview mirror, because what lies ahead for every single one of us is much bigger than anything we'll ever leave behind. Don't ever give up. Life is challenges, and I get it. There were tough days. There were days I don't know if I'm going to make it through the day, but you know what? You got to take it one day at a time, and you got to stop and think about how much worse things could really be.
Yeah, I agree with that. I definitely agree with that.
And unfortunately, I'm just diagnosed with advanced Parkinson's disease from the head injury. So just when I thought I was on the mend, after all these additional surgeries I had and physical therapy and medications and so forth and so on, I wasn't feeling well about 2 years ago. And I knew something was really wrong. And I was diagnosed with advanced Parkinson's disease. Matter of fact, I have a big doctor's appointment tomorrow with a head neurologist to see what, anything they can do, which is nothing they can do for me at this point. Just take the medication. So
Yeah.
life is going to be a big challenge. Life is never going to be the same. It's only going to get worse from this point on.
Yeah. I definitely, when it's something that you can't control, it's definitely hard to cope with, But I do wish you the best of luck with your appointment tomorrow. And I know everybody else here watching does as well. So that's pretty crazy. And I know you don't like to, be called it or anything, but in my opinion, you're definitely a hero, because I couldn't imagine the amount of lives that you saved just by telling people to get out of this area, down there that's going on. Um, some people are in the chat and asking. I have a Cash App set up down at the bottom. If you do want to donate to Joe directly, all of the donations that are made during this show or any show that he's on will go directly to Joe, and I'll even match it. So if you donate $5, I'll match $5 and give him $10, and we'll do that. So, and he also does a lot of charity work. So do you want to talk about some of, your programs and stuff like that you've done for people?
Well, you know what, Unknown, I have 37 topics on the speaking menu. I create all those topics myself, and I parallel all my life experiences with all these topics. I've done hundreds and hundreds of presentations all around the United States of America, every single state multiple times. I've been in Europe and South America, Mexico. Have very interesting topics, but I also get called on doing a lot of charity stuff, and I donate a lot of my own personal money to people that are in need. I do a lot of corporate speaking, but a lot of the money I make, I donate it back to really good causes. And I'll show people checks that I write. I keep photostat copies of all checks. Anybody wants to see them, I'll be glad to fax them over to you.
Okay. Yeah. So let's talk about what you're doing now, and then we'll do a Q&A in the chat, and I'll pull up some questions that people type in the chat and what they could ask you, that question directly. So what is it that you're doing now? As far as like your speaking events, stuff like that, how do people get a hold of you? If they want to bring you to a speaking event or something like that. If you're interested in having Joe on your YouTube channel, you could also message me directly, either through email or on here, and I'll even connect you with Joe if you'd like to host him on one of your programs. He's definitely looking to, get his story out there, and he does a lot of speaking events, right?
I do, as a matter of fact. Like I said, I have 37 topics on a speaking menu. A client, an organization, association, a corporation, whatever group you have. I tell everybody, I have something for everybody. My theory is that a client should choose what messages their attendees hear, not me, the speaker. So if you look at my menu, you'll see all these interesting topics, all very straightforward. I parallel my real life experiences with these topics, and a client can choose any one topic, or they can choose multiple topics. If they choose multiple topics, I can take those multiple topics and combine them into one custom presentation. So the client chooses what messages their attendees hear, not me. My theory is you go into a restaurant, you choose your food, not the waiter.
Okay. Yeah, definitely. Okay. So can you tell them, because I know that they would like this story that you got. Can you tell them the story about how you flew into Kentucky as a New York Italian?
Oh yeah, right. When I had to speak down in Kentucky, I was very grateful, obviously, for being given this opportunity. But I told them that I was a little uptight about being there because I'm thinking the last time an Italian from Brooklyn that looks and sounds like me was in Kentucky in a firefighter's uniform. He was part of the witness protection program. And then some woman asked me. She was admiring my uniform. She was looking at my name tag. She says, "How do you pronounce it? Is that your last name?" I said, "Yes." "How do you pronounce it?" Torello. She said, "Is that an Italian name?" I said, "Yes." "Can I ask you a question?" I said, "Sure." She said, "How come Italians don't like Jehovah Witnesses?" I didn't really know that, but I felt obligated to give a legitimate answer. I said, "Matter of fact, we don't like any witnesses."
I love that story. I think that story is hilarious.
Well, you know what it is, unknown. I open up all my presentations with a lot of humor, and people really love it. And I'm not going to brag, but I'm going to tell you right now, every single presentation that I ever done, and I ever will do, I get standing ovations, and people will wait over an hour in line waiting to come and take a picture of me, and I give them a signed poster of a picture that was sketched of me at Ground Zero when I got out of the hospital.
Oh
And I
wow.
don't, and I also, after my speaking engagements, they'll have an auction and a fundraiser. I donate a private tour at Ground Zero, and people bid on the private tour. People bid up to $10,000. That money goes to their charity, not mine. And I'll take them on a private tour at Ground Zero when they come to New York City, and I'll take them to dinner to an Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, New York, and chauffeur them around, pick them up at the airport, bring them back to the airport, spend the whole couple of days with them, and all the money goes to a charity of their choice, not me. So I get to raise a lot of money. I've raised over $2 million since September 11th.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I
Personally,
would like to do something like that with you next time. Like we spoke about on the phone. Next time I'm in New York, we'll have to do that to where we go live and you can give your tour of the 9/11 area, the trade center, stuff like that. And I think that would be real interesting for the viewers. We got quite a bit in here tonight. I'm not sure if anybody's playing with the numbers or not, but I've personally shared you out on a lot of 9/11 groups, and I think 9 or 10 different content creators shared out this show. So we do have a lot of people in here. If you guys want to go ahead and put your questions for him, I know that there's been a lot of them I could read up, but I don't know how far they'll let me read up on the questions. If you guys have any questions for him that you'd like me to ask him, just go ahead and type it in now, and then I'll pull it up on the screen and I'll read it and ask him that. Um, let's see. I know your time's somewhat limited. We're at an hour and 5 minutes now,
I'm I'm
approaching nine
fine.
o'clock.
I'm fine. I'm fine. We can take as much time as you want.
Okay. Let's see here. Did you receive any type of compensation from the government for what you've lived through on that day?
Well, I'm applying right now through a law firm. The only problem is then they haven't acknowledged Parkinson's as a sickness attached to the World Trade Center. My neurologist, Dr. Duraco from Lenox Hill Hospital, who's been taking care of me, he gave me a 5-hour brain scan last year at the hospital, and the results came back a couple of weeks later, and he called me up and he said, he says, "I don't know whether you noticed or not, but you have severe brain damage." And I was taken back. I'm like, I didn't know what to say. He said, "Were you ever in a car accident? Do you have any bad head injury?" And I told him about September 11th, which he didn't know about. He said, "Well, where was the head injury?" And I told him where the head injury was. He said, "That's exactly where the brain damage is, and that's probably the root cause of why you now have Parkinson's. Anybody who suffers this, what they call TBI, a traumatic brain injury, has a high propensity to come down with Parkinson's disease later in life, like Muhammad Ali getting punched in the head, boxers, football players, members in the service." And so, but the only problem is that the World Trade Center Medical Monitoring Program has not acknowledged Parkinson's yet as a attributed sickness or illness to the World Trade Center. Team and the FBI, the Justice Department, and I fly into Guantanamo and I'm sequestered there as I'm going through the trial of the 5 terrorists being held captive there.
Wow.
You could Google my name. People can Google my name, Joe Cirillo, Guantanamo. You can read all about me. So what I'm telling you is the God's honest truth.
Oh yeah, yeah. I don't think you've ever said anything to me personally that I've ever even would consider as not the truth and the honest truth. You know. So Stroopit in the chat says, "I have a big smile on my face that you know both of my firefighter friends, Michael Roberts and Michael Ragusa. Also, Chief Uncle Joe Fox."
Joe Fox was a 3-star chief. Him and I are very good friends. I've known him a lot of years. Michael Roberts was his sister's son. I didn't know Michael, and then I didn't know Firefighter Ragusa, but I know Firefighter Ragusa's parents, who I got to meet after September 11th. Michael Roberts, I didn't know him personally, but I'm very good friends with his Uncle Joe Fox, retired chief from the police department.
Yeah. Rainbow Melon says, have you become spiritual after all of this?
You know what? I was always a spiritual person. I was a very different kind of a person, and I'm not trying to brag. There's something inside of me for many, many years. I've always felt that there was something more in life for me, that I always felt a special connection with God. And I have this whole different outlook about religion as a whole. I mean, I went to 12 years of Catholic schooling, an all-boys Catholic high school. And after graduating Catholic high school, I suffered very long about religion. I didn't understand it. I didn't fully know exactly what my part was with this religion, what it meant to me, what it didn't mean to me. I didn't really like going to church. I still really don't like going to church for many reasons, and I'm not trying to sound like a nasty person, but the part about it I don't like is there's people there that go there and use church as a car wash for their conscience. And when they come out of church, they're no better than when they went inside. And I'm not knocking people, I'm not trying to put myself above anybody at all. But you know what? I had to find a simple answer to religion and spirituality. And I suffered so long, I couldn't find that answer. And one day, I just completed 20 years on the fire department. I was still a firefighter at the time before I got promoted to lieutenant. And I had worked the night shift, and I got up at 9 o'clock in the morning, ready to go home. And they asked me to stay on for an additional shift, for the day shift, from 9 o'clock in the morning to 6 o'clock that night. And I said, okay. So I took a shower to get ready for my second shift. And I came out of the shower, and I put my clothes on. I was standing in front of the mirror in the bathroom, and I was shaving. And from the mirror that I was looking in, I saw my face in my uniform, and the fire department patch basically was staring me at my eyes in the mirror. And I realized I had become part of something greater than myself. And I realized that patch meant more than I ever knew, because there's so many men before me that wore that uniform with that patch, gave their lives in an effort to save somebody else. And all of a sudden, my career became like a religion to me, because we actually lived the things that we really believed in. And I didn't see that in a lot of other people. And then I started going around. I was doing a lot of religious speaking. I have a whole presentation called The Road Back. And what I do is I reach out to people that are lost in life and want to come back to a religious life again. I teach them how to do that. And I'm very, very honest and very open about it. and I try to make it easy for people to come back to religious life. And I tell people, when you come back to a religious life again, it's a decision that you make between you and God. You don't need anybody else in between. You don't need a priest. You don't need a bishop. You don't need a cardinal. You don't need the pope. You don't need anybody. That's a decision you make to God, that you're ready to start a new life, and He allows that. So don't let anything get in your way, and don't change your personality when you come back to religious life. Like I would never change my personality for nothing and nobody. I still love telling dirty jokes. I still appreciate good-looking women. I like having a couple of drinks. I like telling jokes. I'm not going to put a fence around my life. I'm not going to carry the book of regulations with me. It has nothing to do with that. In life, it's all about having empathy and respect for people, and that's what I live my life with: empathy, respect, and compassion. That, to me, is what Jesus Christ is really all about.
Yeah. So we got a question here. Well, kind of a question statement. They said bombs rather explosives took the towers down. So you actually seen a plane hit the North Tower.
Of course, I've seen it. I was right underneath it. I told you that before, right?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I know. I'm just trying to ask questions that
No,
are
that's
here in the
okay.
chat.
That's okay.
So you don't think like the conspiracy theory where it says that those were holograms, that's not possible in your opinion? You've seen and you felt, I'm sure felt the impact of that plane hitting the North Tower.
Listen, you don't. Nobody has to believe me. Both of those jets are caught on video. Okay, if you don't believe that, then you better not believe your own eyeballs. I don't know what else to tell you. We know that those two planes were hijacked. We know that they took off from Boston Logan Airport within 16 minutes of each other. They struck the towers within 17 minutes of each other. We know from a fact that the flight attendants were speaking to their family members. Those jets were hijacked. They were being followed by NORAD. If you don't
Yeah.
believe that, then you probably believe that the Easter Bunny is telling you that Santa Claus ain't true.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's people that aren't from New York, it's really hard when you haven't seen how big those are and how many people, in my opinion, would have to keep a secret in order to keep that all revealed. It's wild, and it does get crazy. you know um, they say thank you, Joe, for answering that question. There's a lot of people in here that are posting comments for you. Let's see here. God bless you, Joe. You were definitely chosen to be here, sir. That's one. Let's see here. A lot of people saying amen, Joe. Yeah, a lot of stuff going out. They like you. They're a fan of the show for sure. They're a fan of you on here.
You know what,
I think
Unknown?
you're a relatable guy.
Unknown, let me just tell you something. There is one fact, okay? People can tell me all about feelings. I don't want to hear about your feelings. If you want to discuss it with me, give me hard facts that we can prove, okay? And the
Yeah.
bottom line is this here. In Minnesota, a couple of the 19 hijackers were taking flight lessons in Minnesota at a flight school in Minnesota. They didn't want to learn how to fly a plane. They didn't want to know how to land it. They didn't want to know how to take off or land the plane. They just want to know how to fly it. That flight school contacted the Minnesota office of the FBI and told them something's up with these guys. What the FBI office in Minnesota did with that information, I have no idea. But that's the only thing that is a fact. The Minnesota Flight School told the FBI office in Minnesota there are Mideastern guys taking flying lessons. They don't want to learn how to take off or land a plane, just want to learn how to fly it. We think there's something up with them. And what the FBI was able to do with that, I don't know, but that's a fact. So the FBI definitely was given a heads up that something was up with these guys.
Yeah. So you think this was just a major ball drop by the intelligence community?
Well, my problem, Unknown, is this here. Here's my problem. I totally despise the airline industry, okay? And I'm not trying to sound like nasty, but I'm going to tell you what. Back in the 1970s, when I was a teenager in high school, I remember watching the evening news and seeing stories of planes being hijacked. Obviously, they weren't used as weapons of mass destruction. The hijackers told the flight deck, which is the cockpit and the captain, the co-pilot, to fly the plane to a remote location. If not, they're going to blow the plane up because they had bombs on them. and they would take that plane to a remote location. The plane would land, and they would hold the passengers hostage until their demands were met. So hijacking planes was nothing new on September 11th. That had been going on for 20 years before. What the
Yeah.
airline industry did to secure cockpits, I have no idea. And you want to know what? Right now, I can go in any airport right now, go up to a luggage carousel, take somebody's baggage, and walk out with it. And you talk about airline security. Give me a break.
Yeah. Yeah, it's pretty wild. I think I'm not a flyer. I won't get on an airplane. And that was before 9/11. I mean, I have flown since 9/11, but I don't know. I'm a claustrophobic guy. I don't even really like elevators. So I definitely get it there. And then we got
Yes.
somebody asking, how did you get hurt? So you got hurt by a piece of metal flying down from the collapse of the building and hitting your head at
Right,
what?
the
What did
sound-
they say, 100 miles an hour?
The South Tower collapsed on top of the hotel. The hotel was number 3 World Trade Center. The North Tower was number 1. The South Tower was number 2. The hotel was number 3 World Trade Center. In between the two towers, it was 22 stories, 825 rooms, called the Marriott Hotel. The South Tower collapsed. Although it was the second building struck, the first one to collapse. It collapsed at 9:55 a.m. and no, I'm sorry, 9:58 a.m. It collapsed. It collapsed and it fell on top of the hotel. It split the hotel in half, and the hotel fell on top of me. And a piece of steel opened up the back of my head, and huge slabs of concrete were just in my body. With every slab of concrete, more and more bones are breaking. Now I got a fractured skull. The back of my head is split open. My neck and spine's crushed. My left arm is snapped in half. I'm bleeding internally, and I'm suffocating.
Wow. Yeah, that's a list there. Yeah, that's definitely wild. So after all this happens and you go back home, what's your I mean, without revealing, maybe how many kids you have or something like that, but what's your home life like? Are you like real distant, or does your wife kiss the ground you walk on because you survived, or what is it? Do you just feel alone? Can you describe that?
Well, the thing is that, when I got out of the hospital, I went home, I was convalescing, I was still in a lot of pain. My head was still bandaged, my head was still bleeding for the next couple of weeks before the bleeding would stop. And it took me quite a long time before I could get up and start walking on my own. When I felt better, I wanted to go right back to my office in headquarters, and that's what I did. And I was suffering internally. I just couldn't imagine I had lived through what I did live through and didn't know what life was going to have in store for me. I realized that if I didn't get well to the point where I can make it back into the firehouse again, the fire department's going to make a decision to retire me. So for 3 years after 9/11, I was going to all kinds of doctors, having additional surgeries. And because I'm on medication for the brain injury, and three years after 9/11, while I was still trying to get back into becoming an active fireman, in 2004, I got a registered letter from the fire department saying that they're going to let me go and retire me on disability. And I was devastated. I broke down and cried. This was February 2004, almost 3 years after 9/11, and I lost my career. I lost everything. I lost my health, my happiness, and I was lost. I didn't realize, I lost my identity. Everything that I valued in life had to do with the New York City Fire Department. And it's ironic because I took the job on a whim. I took the fire department job because all my friends failed the test, and I took the fire department job to get them angry.
Yeah. That's wild. So after 9/11, you go home. How long does it take until you go back into Manhattan?
You know what? I probably went back to Manhattan about 2 months later. And when I was there, my friends took me there to see it, because you got to understand, I hadn't seen it, because once I got out of the hospital, I went home and all I could see was images on the TV. And then I had my friends come and pick me up in Brooklyn, and they actually took me to Ground Zero to see it. And I remember I got there on a Friday, maybe about 6 o'clock at night, and I just could not believe what my eyes were seeing, because the last image was the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, and now there's nothing. I'm saying to myself, it was like a nightmare almost. I just can't believe it. I'm looking at the destruction. I said, how could this have all happened? And I'm just still thinking, I'm dreaming this. It's a nightmare. And now the reality is starting to set in, and I just can't I can't process the damage of what happened that day.
Yeah. So you're going into Manhattan from Brooklyn. So, from anywhere, 20, 30 miles away from the city, the first thing you see is that iconic skyline. What did you think when you looked at that skyline and you didn't see those, what they call the two boxes that the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building came in? They look like boxes.
Well, you know what? That's funny you should say that because the Twin Towers were kind of like a lighthouse on ground. Like when
Yep.
people came out of a subway station in North Manhattan and they looked up and when they came out of the subway station, they would look around to see if they saw the Twin Towers and they knew what direction they were walking in. Now those towers were gone.
Yeah.
So we lost,
I can imagine.
we lost a huge piece of the New York skyline. We lost, a piece of history. We lost, these iconic structures. When they were built, people hated them, but over the years, people came to fall in love with them. Even though they refer to them as the boxes that the Empire State Building and the Chrysler Building came in. Originally, when they were completed in 1973, people hated them so much they didn't even want to go into them because they stole
Yeah.
the reputation from the Empire State Building.
Yep. So, what do you think about the new One World Trade Center?
I think it's a beautiful building. I was hoping maybe they would rebuild the original Twin Towers, but that's a decision that had nothing to do with me. I mean, the new building is beautiful. I've been in it. I mean, it's an architectural and engineering marvel. I've been up to the observation deck on the upper part of the building, and I would suggest anybody who goes to Manhattan. It's a little pricey. I think they're charging like $38 now to go up to the observation deck. But if you get a chance, it's something that's well worth the money to go up there
Yeah.
and to walk around the perimeter and get to see New York City in a 360-degree panogram.
Yep. It is really beautiful up there for sure. The food's not so good. I think the food was better than the originals.
Yeah, it's amazing because you can look down from the observation deck and see helicopters flying below you.
Yep. Yep. Let's see. Somebody in the chat here wants to know if you ever have nightmares about what happened on that day.
I do, as a matter of fact. I have these. I don't know if I'm going to call them nightmares, to be honest with you, but I have recurring dreams that I'm inside the towers with my wife and kids, and we're on the upper part of the building, and all of a sudden I start getting anxious. I says, "Come on, let's get into the stairs. We got to run down." They're saying to me, "Well, why? What's the matter? What's the matter? It's so nice up here." I said, "No, you don't understand. We got to get out of here now. These buildings are going to collapse." So I have all these dreams, and that come back to me on, not on I'm not going to say it happens on a regular basis, but it does happen from time to time. But I see myself back there again.
Yeah, because is there anything that you do that might bring, might bring those type of nightmares on? Like, is it when you go to speaking events and you speak publicly, or does it just happen at random?
It's definitely a random. There's no rhyme and reason as to how and why that happens. It just happens from time to time. I see myself on the top of the building, on the actual observation deck when it was outside. I see myself walking around up there and saying to myself, "What are you doing? You got to get out of here. These buildings are going to collapse."
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty crazy. So Tracy in the chat here says, do you live with any fears as a result of your experiences that now hinder you in your day-to-day life?
I don't think so. The thing is that my only fear right now is how much worse my Parkinson's is going to get, and how much it's going to compromise my life. I'm a carpenter by trade, and the Parkinson's has affected me. It's affected my speech, as a matter of fact. I stutter a lot and I stammer a lot. Sometimes I lose my trend of thought, but it's affected me more physically with my dexterity. So I live in fear that I might not ever be the same person I was before September 11th. It's kind of frightening.
Okay.
But there's nothing I can do about it. There's nothing I can do, but life goes on. I got to be strong. In the true spirit of what firefighters represent, we're supposed to show the maximum amount of strength under any condition. I think it's something that we carry this obligation with us, and it's a heavy load, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I couldn't even imagine. I mean, I feel like your story is such a story of strength and honor. I honestly think you're a hero. If you ask me,
people think my 9/11 story should be made into a Hollywood movie because it's so ironic about how a children's how a
I watched.
children's rescue hero came to life that day, made in my image. You can't write a story like this. It's a true story.
Yeah. So there's people in the chat that are asking if you have any books out or anything of that nature.
Well, you know what? When COVID first hit about 5 years ago, and I was relegated to staying in my house, my three daughters are registered nurses. My son's a paramedic, and they wouldn't let me out of the house with the fear I might get COVID, which I did get COVID twice. And so while I was relegated to staying in the house and not traveling and speaking, I actually picked up a pen and paper and I started writing a book. And people are urging me to write a book. It's not something I necessarily thought I should do or wanted to do or I was obligated to do, but I started writing, and then I wrote about maybe 15, 20 pages, and then I put it down, and I didn't pick it back up. But I really need to get back to it. I really didn't want to ghostwrite. I really wanted to write the book myself because I want it to be my book, and I want to just, if people want to buy the book, I want every penny of the profit to go to, nonprofits and charities, and I don't want any money out of the book. I just want to give it all away.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I do have some donations that came in during this show, and I believe everybody wants that money to go to you. So you make sure you put that in your pocket.
Well, it's not going to go in my pocket. It'll go to the World Memorial. I have me and a very good friend in San Diego who's a firefighter paramedic by the name of Mitch Mendler. Him and I have a traveling 9/11 memorial that we take all around the country. We fund it ourselves. We get some donations that help us, with the travel expenses. We don't charge anybody to set up this World Memorial. If anybody wants this World Memorial in their town, let us know. If you can help us get it there, we'll set up a presentation. That'll be unbelievable. And so any kind of money donations we get help us support to make all of the displays that we put out of our own pocket.
Wow, what a
selfless the World Memorial.
Yeah, you definitely have a huge heart and stuff like that. And, I will double everything that everybody has donated so far tonight to you. So I appreciate everybody in the chat that did donate. I don't want to repeat any names or anything like that. If you would prefer to remain anonymous, I understand completely. Somebody wants to know if you have a blog or if you have any type of, platform that they could check you out and, kind of tune in with your day to day.
No, what I really need is, I'm a little computer illiterate. I mean, like I'm like a blockhead when it comes to social media. I'm really looking to find people who want to help me with social media, people that are good with AI that can help me. I'm not good with this stuff. I'm terrible with it. I need to find somebody who wants to work with me and partner with me and, help me do social media. I know nothing about Instagram and all this other stuff. I know nothing about it. I wouldn't even know where to begin. I just have a mental block with it. I'm a great carpenter by trade with a circular saw and a hammer, but when it comes to electronics, I'm totally dumb.
Yeah, I'd love to help you start a YouTube channel. I'm sure there's a lot of people that would tune in to, see how you're doing from day to day. And, maybe you could jump on there, tell some stories, stuff like that. I'll even help you get started if you'd like.
If I had a channel, it would probably be called YouBoob, not YouTube. It would be called YouBoob. That's how dumb I am.
Yeah, we'll get it figured out. There's definitely a huge interest in you, and they want to know more and more. So we'll definitely have to have you back on the show again, and maybe we could talk about some more of your experiences and stuff like that. So
that'd be great. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I just want to let people know that, if anybody's having any kind of difficulty in your own life, you're having any challenges, you're going through some depression. I went through that my whole life. As an adolescent, I suffered very severe depression for 10 years. I know what it's about. I know what it's like. All the time I went through it, I never turned to drugs, and I didn't turn to alcohol. I didn't have any professional help. I suffered silently as an adolescent for reasons I don't understand. And so my quest in life is to help people that need to go through and challenge depression feelings and what it's like and how do you deal with it.
Yeah. And I think if you had like a YouTube channel, you could definitely reach out and help a lot of people. You could do a lot of crowdfunding, to get a hold of your charities. What's some of the charitable stuff that you've done in the back? I know you've told me you've donated a few of your speaking event money to certain people and stuff like that. If you wanted to, plug that information as well, maybe they can go and donate to your charity directly if they're listening to this on the replay.
Yeah, I did a speaking gig a couple of years ago in Iowa for the Iowa Lions Club, and every year they hire a speaker, and their speaking fee is $10,000, and they chose me to speak. They're raising money for deaf kids for cochlear implants, and I did a 45-minute presentation. They gave me a check for $10,000 for my speaking fee. I signed and I gave it right back to them. They said, "What are you doing?" I said, "I can't take this check." They said, "What do you mean you can't take the check? That's your speaking fee." I said, "I can't take this check." I said, "Give it back and make sure that some deaf kid gets a cochlear implant." I just couldn't take the money. I just felt that I was born with 4 healthy kids, and they were all very healthy and had no challenges. And there's no way that I can get on a plane with a $10,000 check, just for speaking for 45 minutes while some kid needs a cochlear implant. And then I was on the Doctor's Show in Los Angeles. It was a show right next door to another very famous show, Dr. Phil. And the Doctor's Show was 4 doctors, and they brought people on from all over the world that had some kind of medical issues or injuries. And there's a young boy with his father. He lost both arms and both legs to spinal meningitis. And I gave the father a $5,000 check to provide prosthesis legs for his son when he was dead broke, and his wife took off on him because she couldn't handle the situation.
Oh my God! Wow.
A lot of my own personal money, and I'm not a rich guy. Trust me when I tell you. And that's what hurts me so much is that, Catholics around Lent, what Lent is, right? Just before Easter.
Yeah. Yep.
And, during Lent, you're supposed to give up something for 40 days, right? I said to myself, like, what is this really about? Like, who really cares if you gave up chocolate? You gave up drinking coffee, whatever. Who really cares? It doesn't mean anything. My thing is that if every Christian would give up $100 bill at Lent to a charity, would make a big difference in this world.
Oh yeah, for sure.
And
I
you're
try
really
to
giving
get
up
back on
something.
the holidays.
You're giving up something from your heart. Who cares if you give up chocolate? Nobody really cares. What does it really mean?
Yeah.
Give up $100 check to a charity and build homes for people that can't afford living anywhere in this country because rents are so high. And I'm not a socialist, don't get me wrong. I'm very much a capitalist, but I think that there comes a time where we got to reevaluate capitalism. And I'm not making a political statement. There comes a point where we got to start caring more about people who really care about themselves. And I'm not about giving free people to people who don't want to do anything, don't want to work. If you don't want to work, you don't want to take care of yourself, that's on you. But I want to take care of the regular American guy who goes to work every day and just not making enough money to survive. I think we need to take care of those people a little better. There's enough of wealth in this country to do that. If you don't want to work or you're lazy, that's on you. You know what? There comes a point where don't make a jerk out of my charity and out of my sympathy and empathy. I don't like people using me either. I'm not an idiot. You know what I mean? I'm not here to be your martyr.
Yeah, definitely. So if any of the other content creators that may be listening to this, if you'd like to have Joe on your show or, you'd like to bring him up, just get into contact with me and I'll get into contact with him. I'm sure he'd be willing to do it.
Absolutely.
I'd love to help him, So I think that would be good to get it out and stuff. And I definitely would like to help you build some type of YouTube channel. I think your story, would be a really interesting one. Even if you're just doing stories about your career in the FDNY, I think it's a very interesting thing. I think you're an interesting, relatable guy as well.
Well, we need to get together, Unknown. When you come to New York City, I'll take you on a private tour. And if anybody comes to New York City, you can look me up. I'll take you guys on a private tour. And you can see me if you Google my name, Joe Torello, Ground Zero, you can see me doing one of the tours about 15 years ago. I've been doing this since 2006. I spend a lot of time sharing the day with people from all around the country, especially my speaking clients, that I speak for. And again, if anybody wants me to speak, I got a speaking website, www.joetorello. Very interesting speaking topics, and People love me. I get standing ovations, and I've been in every single state multiple times, even in Alaska and Hawaii, Europe, France, Italy, the Netherlands, Mexico, Brazil.
Yeah. Yeah. Next time I come to New York, I'm gonna contact you, and we're gonna go to Peter Luger's.
Oh, good. Yeah, you
You
got to
know,
twist.
and then
Twist
yeah,
my arm.
yeah, and then after that, we're gonna go to like a rooftop bar or something. I don't know if you drink or not, but I'm sure they got hors d'oeuvres or something there.
As long as it's good red Cabernet, I'm there.
Yeah, there we go.
Win. Just remember something. Win or lose, drink the booze, and never miss an opportunity in life to have a good time because tomorrow's promised to nobody.
Oh yeah, definitely. We're gonna go out and we're gonna have a good time for sure. And we're gonna get some good steak and we'll have a good time. You bring your wife with you, or you could leave your wife at home.
I'm looking at the American flag flying in the background. I took a huge American flag to Guantanamo, Cuba with me. It's called the Patriot flag. Me and my friend
Okay.
Mitch Mendel took a huge American flag all across the country. We flew it in all 50 states in 50 weeks before September 11th on the first anniversary. And on the first anniversary of September 11th, we flew that big flag at the World Trade Center in the morning, Shanksville, Pennsylvania, where Flight 93 crashed in the afternoon, and at the Pentagon in the evening. It's called the Patriot flag. We took it to all 50 states, 255 cities, from town to town to town, flying that flag in honor of every man and woman who ever served our nation in the military, in memory of all the victims of 9/11, and pays homage to all the first responders of our community. It's called the Patriot flag. We flew it all over this country, 50 states, 50 weeks, 255 cities. I traveled from town to town to town with that flag, working with the local American Legion, their local fire department that hung the flag. And we had a community day of patriotism, no politics surrounding it. And its last mission was in Guantanamo, Cuba, when I went down to testify at the trial, and I hung it outside the courthouse where the 5 terrorists are being held captive on trial. And I told them to look out the window at that Patriot flag. I said, you should look at that flag a little closer before you decide to attack us. On the huge American flag, which is a symbol of liberty, freedom, and justice for people all around the world. Those 13 red and white stripes represent the original 13 colonies of our great nation. And that blue field of 50 white stars, you should look a little closer, because those white stars were arranged in 9 rows and 11 columns, symbolizing the day you made the biggest mistake challenging the fortitude of this country. And I'm going to tell you right now, to all the people listening to me right now, when I go back to Guantanamo and give them testimony on the witness stand, I'm going to bring back justice for what they did to us.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate all your efforts and stuff like that. And, there's really no room for that type of stuff in this country. I mean, come as you are, but, don't bring that type of ideology here and try to kill innocent American people for no reason other than, a religious belief. I think that's pretty wild.
You know what? There's 330 million Americans that we know that are legal citizens. A couple of million more that have snuck over to the borderline, which I don't want to get into. That's a topic of another discussion. But of the 330 million Americans in this country, there's handfuls of people out there who don't believe that they live in the best country in the world. And I got a little secret for you. There's 197 other countries around the globe. There's 19,200 airports in the United States of America. If you're not happy living here, you have no problem finding a flight ticket to another country where you think you're going to find it better. And if you're stupid enough to take me up on this offer, you'd be smart enough to book that trip with a round-trip ticket, because as soon as you leave, that's how quick you'll be right back here again, because life doesn't get any better than the United States of America. We owe no excuse to any other nation and a group of people to say that we're proud to be an American, because that came at a big sacrifice so many people before us.
Yeah, and we'll help you pack.
We'll help you pack. We'll even pay your ticket. You know what? Many times there are many times I saw moving vans in somebody's driveway. They were relocating, going somewhere. Never once did they tell me they were moving to another country. Isn't it amazing how everybody from other countries wants to come here, and the people that are born here that don't appreciate this country? And listen, America is the youngest country in the world, and it's ironic that she sets the standards for all the countries to measure themselves up against. And in the growing process of anything or any person, mistakes were made. And you know what? America made a lot of mistakes. We all know that. I lived through the civil rights movement when black people couldn't ride on the front of the bus. I remember when people from same sex couldn't get married. I remember when women couldn't go into the military. But you know what? We faced those faults and we've corrected them. It's time to exonerate America and set her free again, and stop and keep re-indicting her for crimes that she's no longer committing.
Yeah. Yeah, that's that. I agree with that as well. You know, I think it's ironic that everybody wants to come here, and then when they get here, they want to make it like exactly like the place they left to come here for. You know.
Yeah, think about that.
Yeah, it's pretty disturbing. You know, and then there's idiots that actually go for it. You know.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah. These are the people, if you ask them, what did you ever do for your country? They can't answer you. You know what I tell people? Just tell me what you've done for yourself. I don't care if you haven't done anything for your country. What have you done for yourself or people in your family? Probably nothing.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And they're mad that people aren't doing for them constantly, and they want to pack up and leave and go move somewhere else where you got to work.
Yeah, you know, these people are mad because God invented mirrors. I can't tell you. I don't know what to tell you. You know what I mean? You got to look at yourself. I don't know what your problem is. I'm sorry. I just don't get it, you know? Listen, I'm willing to listen to anybody and everybody about real issues, but don't come up with some baloney about some stupid stuff that doesn't really directly affect you. You know what? I believe that we should be taking care of people. There's 5 groups of people I want to take care of in this country. The very young because they're not able. The very old because they're no longer able. People with serious medical issues, mental, physical, what have you. I want to take care of the elderly people. I want to take care of the service people that come back with injuries. And I want to take care of the common man that lost his job and needs to get himself back on his feet again. Everybody else, get up, go out and make it on your own. You know what? Nobody gave me anything in my life. I came from a relatively poor family. I came from a rough, tough Italian neighborhood. I came in a family of 9 people, 7 kids, a mother and father. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment in an Italian neighborhood. You know, our life wasn't always easy, but you know what? I set my sights. You know that I'm the youngest person in the world to get his PhD. Did you know that?
Wow.
Guess how old I was when I got my PhD?
How old were you?
Take a guess.
The
The average age is 33 years old. Guess how old I was?
25.
No, not even close.
Really?
Nope.
How old were you?
I was 14 years old.
14?
Yep, I was poor, I was hungry, and I was driven. That's my PhD.
Yeah. You know what they say, poverty is a great motivator.
Yep, my PhD is being poor, hungry, and driven. I had it at 14 years old. That's all I needed. All I asked in life was an opportunity. You gave me an opportunity, I capitalized on it. You know what? I tell people all the time, if you find an excuse, don't pick it up.
Yeah. I always heard excuses were like assholes.
Yeah, basically, exactly. Yeah, almost everybody has one, except people that have a colostomy. So
yeah, some people definitely would, you know.
absolutely.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Everybody hit the like button. Let Joe know that you are here, and you know, show a little bit of love to the channel. Hit the like button.
Just Google my name. Google Joe Torrillo. There's about 70 pages on the internet about me.
Oh yeah, you're on almost every major news organization. You've probably did 20, 30, 40 interviews.
Oh, easy. Maybe more, probably more than that, to tell you the truth.
Yeah, because if I look you up, and if you do want to look him up on YouTube and check out his other interviews or his other speaking engagements. I mean, it's always nice.
Yeah, look at the one I did for the Future Farmers of America, the FFA. I did a big speaking gig for the FFA, the Future Farmers of America, in Louisville, Kentucky. I spoke to 18,500 kids in the arena. That's on YouTube. Joe Torrillo, FFA.
Joe Torrillo, FFA. And then if somebody wants to get a hold of you, or they're listening to this a year from now or 6 months from now, how can they get a hold of you if they want to bring you to come and do a speaking event?
Well, then go to my website. It's www.joetorillo, TORRILLO, or they can email. You can even email me at my email address is nyfirejoe, New York, just initials, NYFIREJOE @AOL.com. It's also on the on my website, www.joetorillo.com. I have 37 really interesting speaking topics on the menu. You can talk. You can choose any topic that you want. I'll work with you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, contact Joe if you want Joe to come on your channel or you want to do an interview with him or something like that. I mean, he's a really decent guy, and I feel like the viewers really enjoyed this. I mean, we've been over 200 in there. We're almost at, let's see, we're almost over 100 likes. I mean, we got quite a bit of attention on this. So if you're listening to this on the replay, go to his website, reach out, and definitely get a hold of him. I mean, he's a funny guy.
I love humor, by the way. So if anybody has any good jokes, just send them to me. I love them. So
you got some jokes for us?
I mean, I do love dirty jokes, But I
come
mean,
up. What do you got?
No, I don't want to say it on the air. I'm a little embarrassed because there could be some women or some young kids listening in. But I got some good political jokes too. I got to be careful.
Well, I got this turned on adults only because it is September 11th, and when I was looking into that, they do censor anything that is kids only, or it's got to be under mature audiences only. So we're allowed to cuss on here. We're allowed to say dirty jokes here. We're just not allowed to like dox people in the chat or.
I understand, yeah. But I mean, I find dirty jokes actually very funny because some of them are very, very humorous.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I imagine you probably got some good jokes.
Oh, I do have some good. I love them because I tell a lot of jokes when before I begin a presentation on stage, I open up with a lot of humor. People love it.
Yeah. Well, give us one. What do you got? You got something in the holster? Or?
I got so many good ones. Like it was so cold yesterday in Washington, D.C., Hunter Biden got caught with his hands in his own pockets.
Yeah, not yours.
Yeah, right, exactly.
Yeah.
And I tell people, I was watching Discovery Channel last night and doing an expose on the movie and the film industry. Like when they film a movie, when you get to see the final cut, they edit out a lot of the footage that was originally, filmed. Like, the most famous and the most watched movie of all time is? Do you know?
What's that?
The most famous? Well, people think it's Gone with the Wind, but not. It is. It's The Wizard of Oz.
Okay.
And you know what? You get to see the edited version, but in the original version, when Dorothy first meets the Scarecrow, she asks him, "How do you speak without a brain?" He said, "Well, Dorothy, I'm a Democrat."
Yeah.
And then he says to the Tin Man, "How do you exist without a heart?" He says, "I'm a Republican."
Yeah.
Those are just some good, funny political jokes, Some people get uptight over them.
Oh yeah. No, they get uptight.
They're meant to be funny. They're meant to be funny.
Yeah. Oh yeah, they are. They are. You got people LOLing in the chat.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're entertained. Yeah, for sure. Well, we're at hour and 50 minutes. So if you want to call it a night, or if there's anything that you'd like to say to the chat or tell everybody that's here, it says that we got 233 watching at the moment. So if there's any message or anything like that that you'd like to get out there to all these people while they're live listening, I'll go ahead and go ahead and do what you like or say what you like.
Well, the thing is that, what I'm really angry about, what I'm really uptight about, is all these conspiracy theorists that are trying to convince people that the World Trade Center was part of a destruction by our government. I don't know what our relationship with our government has with our foreign relative neighbors. I don't know anything about government politics and things like that. But I can tell you 100%, those towers were taken down by being struck by 2 jets. That is a fact. People say there were bombs in the building. There were no bombs in that building. And what people think were bombs, I can tell you what those noises were. You basically had people not only jumping out of the building, but we don't even know how many people jumped down the elevator shafts and landed on the top of elevator cars, or how many slabs of concrete were falling down the middle of the building and hitting elevator cars. What do you think a slab of concrete would sound like when it hit the top of an elevator car in an elevator shaft? What do you think it would sound like?
Oh my God.
Like a
I
bomb,
wouldn't.
right?
Man.
It wouldn't sound like a bomb. First of all, if there were bombs inside the towers, you would have seen glass flying out from the walls of the exterior walls all around the building if a bomb went off, right? There were 43,600 windows in both Twin Towers. And isn't it amazing that a bomb went off and none of the windows got blown out? Think about it.
Oh yeah, no, I'm not a disbeliever. I see it fall, and what I see it happening is it pancakes. And if it was detonation, you would see the windows blown out before you would see that pancaking, because the pancaking in a demolition comes after the explosives. That's like
Of
an
course.
after fact.
Of course. It's common sense. Just just go to YouTube and Google controlled demolitions. When this company, Washington, D.C., they take down buildings all over the world. They set up these explosives and they count down from 10 to 1. No sudden they hit the charge and all the explosives start going off. You could hear the explosives, you could see the blast, then the building falls down. You didn't see any of that at the World Trade Center. And I was right outside the buildings. And
Well, we have somebody saying that steel doesn't melt, but what
The steel-
happened was the floor got hot, the floor heated up, and then it bent inwards. That's why if you look at the videos right before the collapse, you could see about a 5-floor pushing in where the floor itself is falling in, and you could see that above and around the area to where the plane went in, and the building kind of folded inwards on itself. That's the floor, falling in. So the steel didn't really melt, but the weight of the steel, the weight that was pushed down on the steel, this is just my opinion of it. I'm not an expert, but the weight that the steel couldn't hold at that point when it was hot. And then after that, weight and gravity just takes a hold.
Listen, I do a whole presentation on the design and the collapse of the Twin Towers. This is a topic of a whole nother conversation. If anybody wants to challenge me, I'll tell you what, I will challenge you, everybody and anybody on the stage in front of national TV, and I'll tell you exactly what happened that day, my theory of the collapse. And I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. Most people don't know what they're talking about. The steel did not melt, okay? Everybody overlooks the fact of the amount of structural damage that was inside those towers. Yeah, it's true, a steel frame building never collapsed before, but no steel building ever had that amount of structural damage and had a 767 jet sitting on the floor that was only designed to withstand 80 pounds per square inch of load pressure. I went to school for architecture and engineering. I still have all my blueprints. When I went down to the World Trade Center to study them when they were going up, I had the design part of the towers. Anybody wants to challenge me? I'm ready. Just give me the opportunity and let's go for it.
Yeah. Well, maybe we could set that up. Maybe we could find somebody who, is a conspiracy theorist, and maybe we can bring them on one night on a panel, and you can debate if we could do it in a respectful way without people, calling people names and taking it out and facts only. And hey, this is because I don't even know all the conspiracy theories. I just know some of them. But that would be interesting too.
My first question to all these people: what is your background in building design? Number one, before we even start talking, give me your background in building design and tell me 10 facts about the building support system that you know before we even begin. Okay, because then you're gonna let me speak, and I'm gonna show you my blueprints. I just found my blueprints from 1974 from college that I had to duplicate some of the design loads in the Twin Towers.
Yeah.
Everything I tell you is verifiable. Everything I tell you is fact. You can fact check me on everything.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, maybe that might be interesting to bring on, a conspiracy theorist. We'll bring on 3 conspiracy theorists, and, they can go back and forth, and you guys can have a friendly debate, and, that might be interesting for some viewers.
I think it would be very interesting. But I can tell you right now, whoever decides that they want to do this with me, I'm going to give you a little advice. You better do your homework before you debate me. You better really do your homework. I'm serious. I'm not trying to sound like an idiot. I'm being honest. You better do your homework, and you better know what you're talking about. I'm not
Yeah.
looking to make a fool out of anybody. I'm going to tell you right now. I'm going to make you go home and feel sorry that the day you decide to do this with me.
Oh wow. Yeah, Joe said bring the receipts, huh?
Yep, absolutely. You know what? And
Yeah.
again, I'm going to say this one more time. If anybody has any motive or any incentive to hold the government responsible, it's people like me. People like me that paid the price, okay? If I thought for 2 seconds our government was involved in doing this and there was an organized collapse of the towers, I would own the White House today. My new address would be 1600 Pennsylvania Avenue.
Rainbow Melon says we need to get Alex Jones on here. Dude, that guy's crazy.
Yeah, get them on. You know why? I forgot who it is. Who's the ex-governor of Minnesota? He's kind of like a wacky. He was a wrestler.
Oh, Jesse Ventura.
Yeah, he's. You know what? I'd say about maybe 60. I still have the pictures too at Ground Zero with him. This is going back quite some time ago. I'm going back in maybe in 2006, 2007. He came down to Ground Zero, and he was a big conspiracy theorist, and he came there to meet me. I spent the whole day at Ground Zero with him, telling him exactly what happened. And he came to New York to meet me personally because he heard a lot about me. And you know what? I dispelled everything he had to say, but he was very respectful. I can tell you that right now. He's actually a very nice guy. He's a little out there. Don't get me wrong. The guy. He's definitely out there. He's actually funny to be around.
Yeah, I mean, I would be, interested in a debate with some conspiracy theorists, but it would have to be done respectful. I wouldn't want anybody to come on here and then, because what a lot of people do nowadays is when you prove them wrong or you win an argument, the first thing you are is a racist, a bigot, a pedophile. All that stuff comes out.
Of course, I understand that.
So if it can be done in a respectful way, and you'd like to challenge Joe, then drop a comment on this if you're listening to the replay, and he'd be willing to come on and debate you. I think that would be really interesting.
I'll debate anybody. Listen, I'll debate anybody except the dead body and any soul but a shoe sole.
Yep. Yeah,
if you're gonna debate me, you better do your homework. I'm telling you that right now. This is not a threat; it's just advice. If you want to debate me on this, you better do your homework, and you had better know what you're talking about. Because I tell you what, I can make a fool out of you, and I don't like doing that. And I'm not trying to be pompous or anything. I'm telling you, I know what I'm talking about. I studied these buildings when I was in college. I went to college for structural engineering and architecture. Two of my professors, and you can fact check this, Louis Radioli and George Bory were civil engineering professors, and they also worked for the concrete contractor on the Twin Towers. The company's called Dick Underhill. Dick Underhill had the concrete contract for the Twin Towers, and my two professors were the concrete superintendents on that job. And they were able to take us on a class trip down to the towers when they were going up to study the steel support system. So I know how the towers were designed. I could explain every detail of that support system and the weaknesses that were inherent to those buildings.
Yeah.
Of course, you know what? People always debate about the steel support system of the Twin Towers. Was it wrong? No, it wasn't wrong. Those towers stood for 30 years, and they'd still be there if they weren't struck by two commercial jets.
Yeah. Well, they had to be built differently because they were so tall.
Well, not necessarily because of the height. The thing was that what happened was this here. There were about 18,500 people worked in each tower. So the big challenge that the architect had was how was he going to move people vertically throughout the building every day and get them up to their floor before the workday ended. So Minoru Yamasaki, who was the architect of Reckitt, a Japanese American, he designed the Twin Towers, and ironically, he was definitely afraid of heights, but he designed the biggest buildings in the world back in the 1970s. And designed the buildings in such a way because he designed the elevator system after the New York City subway system. He had a series of express elevators and local elevators. Yep. So with 18,500 people in each tower, how many elevators do you think were in each tower?
I don't remember. I lost somebody in the trade centers that was a family member of mine. And I remember when I was a kid, I went to their office with a couple of my family members. And I remember just to get to their floor, we had to take an elevator up and then we had to go to a lobby, and we had to take another elevator up, and then the elevator went down like 2 or 3 floors just to get to where we had to go.
Right. So you took an express elevator, and then you took a local elevator.
Yeah,
That's how
something like that.
Right. That's how the subway system works in New York City. You have express trains and local trains.
Yep.
Express trains bypass other stops. Local trains go from stop to stop. In the World Trade Center, some of the elevators went nonstop from the lobby floor up to the 78th floor nonstop. You get off, you walk across the hallway, you take a local elevator up to the 88th floor, whatever floor you're on. So how many elevators do you think were in each tower? Take a guess.
I'd probably say the lobby that I was in, it was like a whole room, and it was elevators on the right and elevators on the left. I'd probably say there was 20 to 30.
20? You think there were 20 to 30 elevators in each tower?
Well, I don't even know which tower I was in, but I mean, this was in like the late 90s.
But they were both the same anyway, so it didn't matter.
Okay.
There are 107 elevators in each tower.
Okay. Yeah. Wow. That's quite a bit.
So the point of this conversation is, anybody who wants to debate me on this, you better know what you're talking about. You better do your homework and study up on the Twin Towers, because I'm going to tell you everything that you never heard before. I'm not trying to sound like a wise ass or anything like that, or sound pompous. I know what I'm talking about, and I know how to.
No, you're passionate about this.
I'm very passionate about it. Listen, I'm the best. I mean, I am the best tour guide at Ground Zero. There's nobody better than me at this.
Yeah.
When you come to New York City, you're going to be amazed at the tour that I'm going to give you.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm sure I'll enjoy it. I mean, I'm sure I'll get information that I haven't gotten. I'll see if a few people that are New York locals here that want to, meet us up and, take a tour from something like that would be pretty crazy.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. All right. Well, I say we've been on here for 2 hours. Why not ruin a good thing? We could always bring you back on. The chat loves you, and the people love you here, especially when you get real excited.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. Yeah. I don't mean to sound like a jerk, but, all this crazy stuff about this conspiracy, it's getting on my nerves at this point. And I'm ready to challenge everybody and anybody anytime they want. Totally unprepared. Put me on stage, roll the cameras, and let's get it on. You better just know what you're talking about. That's all I'm going to tell you.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this is my best show yet. We got 240 people watching, and we got 238 people that hit the like button. So virtually everybody that's here, that's been here with us your entire interview, has basically hit that like button. So that's a really, really good turnout. So people definitely like you. I'll have to bring you back on. And, maybe next time you can come on with some boxing gloves. It seems like you're ready to lace up the gloves and
absolutely
and go to town. People definitely like that.
That's the way we roll. That's the way we roll in Brooklyn.
Yep, exactly. There's a lot of people from Brooklyn in this chat right now.
Win, lose, or draw. Win, lose, or draw. Everybody walks away with a couple of lumps. That's the way it's got to be.
Yep. That's what makes it good. You shake hands and you walk away.
That's it.
You don't have to do too much. So I'll go ahead and end the show, and I will I'll give you a call probably tomorrow.
Sure, give me a call.
Shoot me a text tomorrow, and we'll talk.
Yeah, I'll be in the neurologist office for quite a while tomorrow for my Parkinson's update. I'll let you know what's happening with that.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know what goes on with your appointment, and then we'll go from there.
You know what? When life gives you lemons, what do? You
throw them at somebody.
No, when life gives you lemons, what do most people do?
Make lemonade.
Exactly. When life gives you Parkinson's, what do?
I don't know.
Make milkshakes.
Okay. Yeah, because you're shaking.
Yeah, that's one of my jokes. Yeah.
Wow. So you already got the jokes ready.
No. You know what's weird? This is really ironic. My best 30 joke was about Parkinson's.
Okay.
And now I have Parkinson's.
Well, it's a good thing that you didn't get that crap that everybody south of Houston got, where, they ended up getting cancer and stuff from all that asbestos cloud down in lower Manhattan.
Well, right now, you know what? As of today, we lost more firefighters after 9/11 than we did on that day. Right now,
Yeah.
on 9/11 we lost 343 firefighters. As of today, we lost about another 375 since 9/11.
Yeah. Yeah.
And every single week another firefighter. Matter of fact, tomorrow we're having a line of duty funeral for a firefighter that died from a 9/11 cancer. Tomorrow.
Wow. Wow.
Every single week, another firefighter dies from cancer from 9/11. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. Yeah, because they send me stuff. They send me information. If I was in this area at that time, you could be you could claim this or claim that, and I'm like, what?
And people are doing it. Trust me. People are doing
Yeah.
it. People that were like a mile away and all of a sudden got like skin cancer because they take the sun every single day. And now they're making the government give them a payout. Some of these people are really, it's gotten sickening. It's
Yeah.
people think, you know what? 9/11 brought out the best in a lot and brought out the worst in some people. Trust me when I tell you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I would never ever file for something like that and take away benefits from somebody who
Oh, people
actually.
are doing it. You have no idea what people are doing. You can't even imagine what people are doing. You can't
Oh,
even
I know.
imagine stories that I know.
Wow. All right. Well, yeah, we'll definitely have you back on. I know people are going to be requesting Joe in my next future show, so we'll just stay in touch, and we'll come up with something, and we'll get you back on here. And you're pretty. A lot of people were entertained by you and enjoyed your interview, and it had some real sad moments and had some funny moments too. And you get real riled up, huh?
If you don't hire Joe Turillo to speak at your next event, we're both losing money.
Yeah.
Joe Turillo speaking fee is so reasonable you think you're robbing him.
There you go. Yeah. We're both losing money, huh?
There you go.
All
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. Okay.
All right, Joe. Well, is there anything you want to say to the people before I go ahead and end this show?
No, I just want to tell everybody thank you for listening in, and hope one day I'll get to meet all of you. And whatever happens in your life, just remember that sun that shines tomorrow morning shines to everybody. Tomorrow is another day, a new beginning. Don't give up on life. It isn't always what we want it to be. It isn't always what we thought it would be and need to be. But you know what? It's the same thing for all of us. And one thing that I always tell people, it's a fallacy to think that people were born equal. People believe that it's not true. We were not born equal. It's never meant to be that way. And why do I say that? Because everybody comes into this world under a different set of circumstances. Some of us come into health, some come into wealth, some come to sickness, some come to poverty. From day one, we're all at a different vantage point. We don't come into this world equally. But in the end, God makes us all equal in the end. So don't worry about what you don't have, what somebody else has. In the end, none of us are going to have anything. In the end, God makes everybody equal, and that's the way it was meant to be. Would you bet on a horse race if everybody finished the finish line at the same time? Of course not. So in the end, we're all gonna come. We're all gonna be the same again. Nobody's leaving with a Mercedes or a checkbook or a credit card or stocks and bonds and anything like that. So don't worry about what you don't have, what somebody else does have. In the end, we're all gonna be the same, and that's the way God meant it to be. So take all that stress off yourself of what you haven't gotten in life that you've been looking for. It's not about material stuff because once you have it, you don't want it anymore anyway. Wake up in the
Def-
morning and look in the mirror and learn to love that person you see in the mirror before you learn to love anybody else in this world. And whatever you've done, forgive yourself. I don't care what it is, you know what I mean? No matter how bad you think it is, look in the mirror and say that you forgive yourself and start off tomorrow. Because all of us would like to have a new beginning, but up until the time they invent the time machine, none of us have an opportunity to have a new beginning. And I would love to have a new beginning for a lot of reasons in my life, but you know what? It ain't going to happen. But guess what? We can all have a better ending, and that's something you can choose to do if you want.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. I'm sure everybody in the chat really appreciates that. And Joe, yeah, I've had a great time tonight. I really appreciate you coming on. I personally consider you a total and utter hero for the lives that you've saved that day. Also for the lives that you changed and the people that you've helped in your path afterwards. And I'd love to have you back on the show, and we'll definitely talk about bringing you back up.
I love that opportunity.
Yeah, definitely. I hope you have a great appointment tomorrow. And I'm going to go ahead and close out the show. Thank you to everybody who's watching and everybody who, hit the like button, everybody who donated to Joe. I'll be matching that donation and sending that over to him tonight. I will not keep a single penny of it. In fact, I'm going to double it. And anybody who is listening to the replay that is ending up donating, just make sure you put Joe T in the subject line on Cash App. That way I know. So if I'm listening to this a month from now, I could send it over to him and I know what it's for. Thank you to everybody who tuned in, and, I appreciate it all. So I'm going to go ahead and end the show now. I hope you all have a great night.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I'll look forward to speaking to you again.
Yeah, definitely. We will, for sure.
Good night.
Yep, good night.
Only thing that's on my mind is who's gonna run this town tonight.
Yeah, I say that we are. This is Rock Nation. Pledge your allegiance.
We gon' run this town.